Rob Sindel, I remember when CSR was the third biggest company in Australia, and now it's outside the top 150, having sold the sugar business and the Rinker's business in the US. But it just seems to me now, having done all that, you're a bit of a strategic dead end. You've got aluminium sugar losing money, plasterboard and other building materials, no growth at all. So the question is, where are you going to get growth from?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of what we've always done is we've approached it from the point of view of, at the time, was to say, does a conglomerate structure work? And clearly, companies around the world were actually divesting or, cutting themselves in half to give those businesses the opportunity to grow. If you look what happened with Rinker, it was a very successful transaction. The same thing with the sugar business. We've, sold it for a great price, returned the majority of that money back to shareholders. Where we get growth in our building products business is huge amounts of growth opportunities around new product development, innovation, new building systems, energy efficiency, speed of construction. So, I can take you through a whole lot of examples of where we're getting growth in our underlying building products business. It's basically about lightweight construction, and it's basically about how do we position ourselves for a multi-residential future in Australia.
So basically, you're saying it's organic growth.
It's organic growth. I mean, you don't want to talk about strategic growth at this stage. We know we've got some challenges, as we talked about with our Viridian business. What our shareholders have said, let's make sure we turn the Viridian business around because we've got a lot of growth, we've got a lot of revenue out of that. We haven't yet got a lot of profitability. So once we've achieved that, then there's plenty of other opportunities out there.
You've got a strong enough balance sheet to make acquisitions, haven't you?
Yeah, we do actually, and we've got the opportunity to buy businesses, or we've got the opportunity to add to our factory network in Australia or overseas. So we've got lots of opportunity. We think the next 12 months is going to be challenging. We're going to hang on to our cash and be quite prudent about our investments.
I wonder whether you wish you had sugar now instead of glass. Do you accept that buying Pilkington was actually a bad deal, or was a bad idea?
We definitely paid too much money at the time. I think the board has acknowledged that on the basis that we've taken a couple of significant write-downs. It's in a challenging market. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. It's to look back at the time and saying we were competing against private equity. It fit with the portfolio at the time. We're happy with the business now. As you say, it's loss-making. It's a challenging environment, but we have a lot of faith in the ability of glass to be a building product that everyone wants and uses.
I remember at the time that it was all about double glazing. It was going to be climate change was going to lead to double glazing, so everyone would have to have 2 sheets of glass in their windows instead of 1, and it was going to make a fortune, and that never actually eventuated.
Well, government policy changed, as you remember, Alan. It was the greatest moral challenge of our time. The CPRS was introduced, and what was meant to come with that was a whole lot of changes to building standards. There was the Prime Minister's Energy Efficiency Task Force. Yeah. What I think we ended up was a carbon tax, and none of the things that actually are going to change energy use in Australia. So the key for us is to make sure we change our building codes, that the states and the federal governments work together so that we do save energy rather than just put a tax on.
You were at Pioneer in the last recession 20 years ago.
I was.
How does this situation that you're seeing now compare with what you saw then?
We seem to have dipped in construction, whereas the dips then were much shorter. They were 6 or 8 months, and then you could see your way through the other side. This time, I think we had the dip, we had the stimulus, and now we've dipped again on the basis. And I think people are very fearful about what's happening in Europe, and we've got a lot more information through the media. So people are putting off those big decisions like buying a house, and so you're seeing a much more drawn-out recovery.
But clearly Australia is not in recession.
No, exactly.
Unemployment's low, the economy's okay, but housing is definitely weak.
Yes.
Even though there's supposed to be a housing shortage. So do you think that it's possible that the housing shortage is a myth?
Well, I think that some of the forecasts that we've previously seen around 180 and 200,000 housing starts a year being underlying demand, I don't believe those, because they were predicated on the basis of household formations, the number of people living in a house shrinking. That hasn't come to pass. We've actually seen that number start to turn the other way.
You mean the number of people in a house is going up?
It started to go up after falling for a number of years. What you've got shortages in certain places. You've got shortages in New South Wales, you've got shortages in southeast Queensland, you've got a shortage in Western Australia. You don't have a shortage in Victoria, and it's often driven by land shortages, it's driven by a number of factors. So I think it's very hard to categorise the Australian market as just one market. There's a series of under markets.
How do you feel about the future of manufacturing in Australia?
Look, I think the high Australian dollar and all these sort of excuses that people are using, and I do see them as excuses, are one part. What I think is the countries that have done really well around the world have found a way to maintain their manufacturing base. If we look at Britain, if we look at Spain, if we look at Italy, they've lost their manufacturing base and look where they've ended up. If we look at France, Germany, and the ones that maintained a core manufacturing base, those are the ones that have done well globally. We see the US reinventing itself in a manufacturing sense by reinvesting in their manufacturing, and I think it's so important that Australia and New Zealand maintains what part of its manufacturing base it can be globally competitive in. So our objective is to reinvest. We've just opened a new $160 million plasterboard plant here in Victoria that is globally competitive. It can make plasterboard as cheaply as anywhere in the world. So it's about investment, it's about people, but it's also about maintaining those jobs in Australia.
It's been great talking to you, Rob Sindel. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan.